Hello and welcome to the Dr. Mumbi Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki here in London with my sister here, Janet Adler, right?
Alder.
Oh, it's Alder.
Alder.
Janet Alder. And she's a mother. She's a grandmama. I'm telling you, black don't crack for real. I know, right? Anyway, that's not even why we're together, but I just wanted to tell you guys, melanin is something special, but there's a lot of, we see a lot of stories of how our young brothers and, young African men, whether they're here in the UK, whether they're in the US, being mistreated. And this is just a really, really touching and quite sad story. And we're hoping that justice will be served, because it's never been served, has it? Maybe you can just start by briefly introducing yourself.
My name's Janet Alder. I'm the sister of Christopher Alder, who was an ex-paratrooper that fought in the Falklands for Britain, and he died in the custody of the police in 1998.
The man lying here on the floor of a police station is 37-year-old Christopher Alder. Officers talk to each other as he is left motionless for 11 minutes with his trousers round his ankles. He is dying. It was several minutes before officers realised the seriousness of the situation and went to his aid. The 37-year-old was an ex-paratrooper and Falklands veteran. 5 officers were subsequently cleared of manslaughter, but an independent Police Complaints Commission report said officers involved with him were guilty of the most serious neglect of duty and unwitting racism.
Wow, okay. So how long had he been a paratrooper for the UK?
Yeah, he went into the forces when he left school. I think it was in the 70s, and he came out in the 80s.
So what were the circumstances surrounding his death?
Yeah, he'd gone to a nightclub one night, and there'd been a bit of a fracas, with one of his friends. His friend punched him, he fell, bumped his head. He got taken to the hospital by the paramedics.
Yeah.
Once in there, 2 police officers went to see him. One of them he was at school with. And they started pulling him around in the hospital.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow him to go to the toilet on his own. They were dragging him about. And then next minute they dragged him out with his feet trailing. Once outside, he spoke to the security guard, because that was a job that Christopher was doing before he died.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'll see you later, Mally." And one of the police officers said, "Oh, you'll get my name and number in 5 minutes." And so Christopher stepped fully compass mentis into the back of the van, handcuffed behind his back. And he came out the other side in a really supposedly short journey, fully unconscious, with his trousers and box shorts down to his knees.
Yeah.
His belt missing.
Yeah.
And more additional injuries.
So, that's terrible. What happened? Like, what was the reason the police gave for this?
They said to prevent him going back into the hospital to breach the peace. So he'd not committed a crime or anything.
Yeah.
He was a complainant in an assault, and he wasn't happy with the treatment of the police officers.
Yes.
Dragging him about as a victim.
Yes.
And and that's just the way that they treat him. And they took him away, CS gassed him and beat him until he was unconscious, and left him to die on the floor at the feet.
And this is heartbreaking, because we hear these stories. The justice must be done. What is your family doing now? Because the story didn't end there, did it?
Not at all. We went to an inquest. We have an inquest into some of the deaths, so that found out exactly how they died.
Yeah.
And 9 ordinary men and women had watched the CCTV footage, because it was all on video.
Really?
Yeah. And they'd watched the footage, they'd listened to the evidence, and they came to the conclusion that Christopher had been unlawfully killed by the police. I really thought then that justice was going to be done, because, I were quite naive to those type of things. I was just a mother trying to bring up my children and whatsoever,
Yeah.
trying to keep out of trouble.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I honestly thought that in this country that, when somebody's in the wrong, they get held accountable. But that wasn't the case. We had to push to get the police into court,
Yeah.
and the prosecutors of the land conflicted the medical evidence, which enabled the police officers to walk free. Then what had happened, I thought, right, you know, we can make, after the inquest of unlawful killing, I thought we can bury my brother.
Yeah.
And, you know, he'd already been identified. He'd been in storage for 2 years because...
It took 2 years for the inquest to...
2 years for the inquest to be conducted.
Yeah.
But in all that time, they were saying, well, we don't know how he's died. Which, you know, I mean, they know Tutankhamun down to,
Yeah.
and they cannot, you know, tell you how a 37-year-old ex-paratrooper has died in their custody. So eventually we buried him. Well, we thought we buried him. I
Yeah.
got the army in, got my family in, which was quite dysfunctional, but I got
Yeah.
it together. And in 2011, they told us that we'd buried a 77-year-old woman from Nigeria. Somebody had swapped his body,
That is
hid him in
painful.
6 body bags.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't have been for that family insisting to do a ceremonial, you know, put a ceremonial scarf on her, and insisted after 10 years wanting to see the body of their loved one, I believe that they would have buried my brother in her place and said nothing.
Now an investigation has begun into how the body of a man who died in police custody and was supposed to have been buried in Hull more than a decade ago has turned up in a mortuary in the city. It's understood that the body of a woman may have been buried instead of 37-year-old Christopher Alder.
His sister Janet and other family members buried Mr. Alder more than a decade ago. But today they were told they laid the wrong body to rest.
I'm just in total shock. I really cannot believe that after all we've been through, after all the family's been through, you know, Christopher's mode of death and everything, that there can be so much incompetence, or it just feels like contempt. It just feels like adding insult to injury when you're trying to move on with your life.
This evening, Hull City Council said they could not yet explain how Mr. Alder's body had laid for so long where it was thought a woman's body was being kept.
I can confirm that the body of the man has been identified to me as Christopher Alder. I'm appalled and distraught at what I have learnt. In conjunction with Hull and East Yorkshire Hospitals NHS Trust, we will be undertaking a thorough review of the circumstances surrounding these events.
13 years on from events in this police station, Christopher Alder's family thought that this tragic episode in their lives was long past. But they will now have to have a funeral service and a burial for him for a second time.
Wow, there's so many angles to this story that I can't even, so how did the family react? Because, you know, it's like mourning is such a complicated and heavy process, and then everything is dug up again.
Well, we all kind of reacted differently, as I say, because we were a family that were brought up in state authority care anyhow, and we'd already had a really bad
Experience,
time, being brought up. But when you leave that situation, you just think, well, I was just unfortunate to be in that position. But, I mean, it's left its scars on all my family. I've got 2 brothers in psychiatric hospital due to what's happened, one that's a broken man from what's happened, and I just was the one that kind of went the other way. I kind of, as my brother said, she'll go ballistic, and that's exactly what I did. I was asking questions. They didn't like the fact that I was asking questions, and I wouldn't accept what they were saying. So they were spying on me illegally.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you, is there something your brother knew about something that made him get taken out by the police officers?
No. No. In this country, they're very, very racist against black men. The police. It's a very close knit circle. Is the police. They automatically see us as criminals. I mean, just history tells you how they speak about black people.
Yes.
And if they're joining the police with this kind of mindset, they're actually displaying it on the ground, you know what I mean, to the ordinary men and women.
Yeah.
Even if you're innocent, they see you as guilty straight away, and that's the kind of treatment that they're meting out to young black men in this country. So really, you don't have to know anything. It's just a case of that is the way that they treat you in this country. Like you're less than, you know what I mean, the white people that's here. And I was brought up by the state, and I was brought up to believe that everything was correct in the state. And I got such a shock, and they bullied me, you know.
So how did you find out that they were spying on you?
I already knew. When I went to the police station, first of all, it was in 1998. I came out the police station and I went into a bookshop, and I turned round with a book in my hand, and I saw was a plainclothes police officer in navy blue overalls and a blue jacket. And he had a notebook in his hand with a badge on, you know, a little notebook, and I went, oh my goodness, because I was so scared at the time. You know, what's happened to my brother and what are you going to do to me type thing. And I made everybody in the shop aware, and they went to the door, and then he went across the road, and then I thought, oh my goodness,
that's scary.
I'm going to have to get a solicitor. So I went round the corner, went into a solicitor's, and I'd collected the first 5 days of newspaper prints. Because on the first 5 days, they were saying that we have a man in connection with the death. They were going to charge his friend with his murder.
And it wasn't his friend.
It wasn't his friend, it was the police.
Yes.
So I made a complaint that I'd been spied on to the Independent Police Complaints Commission. Well, it was called the Police Complaints Authority then. And they said, no, there's no evidence. But I'd always felt as if my phone was getting listened to.
Oh, yeah. Do you hear that little click?
Yeah. My mail was getting intercepted. I just, you know,
knew.
Just the way that I was being
the women have that seventh sense, you know what I
mean?
mean?
Just the way that I was being treated by the police and whatsoever just was not right, you know. And then I decided then to see if we can take the case to the European courts, because that's like, you know, the highest court in the land. Well, if you don't get any justice in this country, you're supposed to have an opportunity to get it when you go to Europe.
Yes.
And at the last minute, the government conceded and said that Christopher.
So you actually got a hearing with the European courts.
Yeah.
I'm so your brother would be so proud.
Yeah,
it's so amazing that you took it all the way. Yeah.
And they said that his death was inhumane and degrading, and his right to life had been denied, and it was through racism. So I honestly thought after that I'd done everything possible that I could.
Yeah,
you've
done it all.
Yeah, because they tried to make his life so insignificant.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people have been made aware of, you know, that he was a man of thought.
You've done your brother so proud. Like, your story has gotten out. You got in touch with me, but not even that. Like, even when I was here, Galaxy Radio, shout out Sister Shanice, she got in touch with me, and I know you were on there, and I listened to some of your shows. So this has actually made you kind of an activist.
Yeah, I was just an ordinary mother trying to make sense of the world and look after my children.
Yeah.
And I was propelled into a situation that I never expected to be in. I'm not saying it's been easy.
No,
sometimes it's been very, very frightening.
Yeah.
But it's been the support of the ordinary people that's given me the courage, and to see that this is not just a one-off thing.
This happens all
This is happening all the time. I've met, you know, it's shocking the amount of families that I have met around this country that are in the same position as myself. It's absolutely shocking.
Really, who have their brothers or their sons or their fathers.
Yeah, there's a lot of grieving, you know, women and men out there, do you know what I mean? You know, and it's for the safety for our children in the future. That's, you know, we cannot sit back and allow this to happen. It's, you know, it's like the job that you're doing.
Yes, I got it. Someone has to do.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.